The 5 days of Draftmas are upon us, and on this fifth day, my gift to you is 5 executive quotes. That coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Sign up today, and from there you will get news, analysis, insight, one-on-one conversations with me, and bonus content. No hashtags, no apps, no filters, just text messages. You send them to me, I send them to you. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Get in on that fun today. I'm David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's FanNation, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, everydayers, we appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've already admitted I've got a competitive side, and that side of me is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Just join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. On today's episode, we are kicking off my admittedly kind of cheesy, but hopefully kind of fun new idea, the 5 days of Draftmas. We are 5 episodes. This episode is number 5, and when we get down to the bottom of it, we will be on Thursday, and we will be on draft day, the first round of the NFL draft happening Thursday night. I will be back with you late Thursday, early Friday morning, whatever time it is, with an episode reacting to whatever happens on Thursday night. We'll be back again Friday night, early Saturday morning if the time requires it, to talk about day 2. And then we will be back again Saturday night to talk about day 3. Since we are 5 days away, I fear we use the show to count down these 5 days. And today I am giving you 5 executive quotes. We sat down with Commanders General Manager Adam Peters and Assistant General Manager Lance Newmark. So we're going to start off first. We got 5 quotes from executives. I'm just going to say it that way. Hint, hint, hint. And we are going to start off with the story that unfortunately was taking over a lot of social media. I had a talk with Adam Epstein on it on the radio here in DC. And that, of course, is the fact that the Washington Commanders brought 4 quarterbacks in at one time for top 30 visits. Here are these Washington Commander executives on that topic.
A lot's been made over the last 24, 48 hours about bringing in the 4 quarterbacks. I know you have in the past at San Francisco, Adam, have brought in different prospects before. Is it different with quarterbacks, or what's your sort of philosophy behind bringing in all these guys together?
Yeah, I don't think it's very different personally with quarterbacks. With all these guys, they all know each other really well. And so what was cool is while we got to see them all together in a group setting at the Topgolf, which was really fun. And I think everybody had a great time, and it was very beneficial to see everybody in a more relaxed environment. They all got a lot of time individually with their coaches, with us, where they were staggered coming in too. So it wasn't like they were sitting in a room together. They all had their own individual time with everybody. So it worked out really well. And then you got a great blend of that, and then working everybody together, in a fun environment.
Yeah, this is the first time that I've been a part of doing it with a huge group of players together at once. And I thought it was a really cool dynamic seeing like the organic, like how guys came together, how magnetic certain individuals were versus others. Just that loose kind of casual feel from the one night to the next day, where it was more individualized the next day. So I really thought it was a great experience, because you see how guys are in a group, and then you spend time with them individually as well. So I came away from it very impressed with the process, and I just thought it was a very positive overall experience.
All right, once again, that was Adam Peters and Lance Newmark, your GM and assistant GM of the Washington Commanders. And we talked about this 4 quarterback thing a little bit at the end of yesterday's episode. And I intentionally put it at the end of yesterday's episode because as we're talking about this, I knew that we had this press conference coming up on Thursday, and I knew that these 2 guys were going to be asked about the very topic. And it was already put out there kind of, but we'll just reiterate, look, this is something that Adam Peters learned or, at least reinforced, what have you, in San Francisco. This is something that general manager John Lynch has done in the past. I don't see Florio, Chris Sims, anybody, Bueller going after John Lynch, telling them that he doesn't know what he's doing, a general manager who has put together several championship caliber rosters over the years. So again, to me, honestly, this is a little bit of, we're getting towards the NFL draft and there's not a whole lot going on news wise. So people need something to talk about and maybe rant about to seem really, really angry about. And also partly that the Washington Commanders are still an easy target, right? Another member of the beat, we were talking about this on Thursday ahead of the press conference. And that's just the bottom line, whether it's the name, whether it's the former owner, when it's the win-loss record, whether it's Chase Young, whether it's whatever the team wants, whatever you want to pick at, the Washington Commanders are still an easy target. But you hear Adam Peters talking about seeing them all in a group setting, and this is kind of what we talked about yesterday. I made some assumptions just as a leader in the past and as an evaluator of personnel. What could you possibly see from the situation? And what you're trying to see these guys in their natural environment, in front of the suits, in front of the executives. They're always going to be on their game. They're always going to be in interview mode. But when you get them around a group of other players, like-minded individuals, they're going to relax a little bit and they're going to kind of become their true selves. And I think that's important for this team to go through and understand and see. And I think that's what the goal was. And I think it's really interesting because you hear Lance Newmark talk about it being the first time that he's been around that experience and says that it was a positive experience. Now, granted, he's not going to sit up there and say, yeah, it's the first time I've seen that happen. I thought it was kind of crazy and dumb, to be honest with you. Like, he's not going to say that anyway. But what I really liked is the part where he said that there were some guys he knows that were more magnetic compared to others. And that right there, I think, is really the crux of this conversation, especially with the 4 quarterbacks. But what's being lost in this is the Washington Commanders didn't just have 4 quarterbacks come in. They had 20 players. 20 of their top 30 visits were there at one time. So it wasn't just the 4 quarterbacks. It was all 30 players. And again, you talk about there being people who were more magnetic. That means there were people who were drawn to certain people more than they were drawn to other people. Listen, you got 4 alphas in there. You got 4 quarterbacks who in the game of football are expected to lead teams. All 4 led national teams, like nationally known teams, powerhouse teams, whatever you want to call them. And they were the alphas on their team. So now you put 4 alphas in the same space, in the same environment, around a bunch of other players, linebackers, receivers, tackles. I don't have the full list of the guys in front of me, but you get what I'm saying. Various position groups worth of people, and you put these 4 alphas in the pit. Now, you do this in nature, and some alphas are dying, right? Like, they're just going to fight till there's only one standing and the rest of them are dead. You do this in the human world, and we don't die and we don't kill each other. What we do is we see who naturally gravitates towards other people. And for listening to Lance Newmark, there was at least one dude out there who seemed to gravitate or have more people gravitate towards him than the others. Will it determine exactly who they take? Maybe not. Could it have an influence? I think it absolutely will. I think that's the whole purpose of doing the exercise. So it's not just about the 4 quarterbacks being around each other. It's around those other 16 players being around those 4 quarterbacks and seeing which of those 4 quarterbacks those players gravitated towards. But then you also hear Adam Peters talk about, because the big concern was you're diluting the process and not getting as much time as possible and all these other things. And Adam Peters saying, look, they got plenty of time individually with coaches and everybody else. So nothing to be concerned of there, nothing to see there. In fact, if anything, it's one of those ways. If you've ever heard the story of the 5 monkeys, it's a made-believe story about scientists and the way that they experiment. But if you've never heard of it, go Google it, YouTube it, whatever you want. It's a very good, parable, fable, whatever it's called, fake story that has a moral, right? And it's very good. And it looks to me like whether this is Adam Peters' creation, John Lynch's creation, whoever created this methodology of doing it, I think it's pretty brilliant, to be quite honest with you. I think it's a very good way to see in a natural setting who is the true leader of a group and who maybe is not so much the true leader. So that's quote number 1. That's how we're going to do this thing. We've got quotes 2, 3, 4, and 5 coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. So For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination. yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, today and every day. Thanks for coming through. Make sure you come back Monday. We're going to have our 4th episode, and I will give you 4 gifts as we continue the countdown towards NFL Draft Day, which is, of course, next Thursday. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the Ultimate 6-episode series, which, by the way, dropped on Wednesday, which was 6 episodes from the NFL Draft. So kind of already did a 6th one, right? The 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft, and you can hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Our second quote from executives here on today's episode, 5 executive quotes, 5 episodes away from the NFL Draft, talking about how close the Washington Commanders are to settling on a quarterback and why evaluating quarterbacks is so difficult.
How close are you to finalizing the player you want, and when would you like to and need to settle on a guy?
Yeah, we're real close. There's still a few more things in the process we have to do. And as you guys may be getting, I'm pretty process-driven, process-oriented. So we have to debrief on our 30 visits with the whole staff, talk about everybody there. That we haven't done that yet. And then later tonight, we have a medical meeting as well to go over all the medicals in the combine and get that information as well and just ask pointed questions if there are any. On certain players, if we have some questions on that. So we have a few more things. DQ and I will huddle up and probably have an answer really sometime next week. Now, I will say this also, you don't really need to make a decision until you need to make a decision. So there's no rush with that, but I think we'll have a pretty good idea what we're doing early next week.
Why is quarterback evaluation so hard? And since you guys have been in the league, do you think the league has improved at it?
Oh, wow. I don't know if we've improved at it. If you look at the 21 draft, right, which I was a part of in that one too. And that was, you're seeing that it wasn't a ton of success at the top end of that draft based on so far there's all those guys' stories are yet to be written. So it is hard and it's really hard, but, you try to learn from all those things as you go along. We've both been in this 20 plus years. We have a lot of experience, both good and bad. You probably learn a little bit more from your bad experiences and from your good experiences, but you try to bank all those experiences and everything you learn and help you make the best decision the next time. But just like anything, I think we talked about it, maybe it was at the combine, but it's a lot easier to evaluate a defensive end than it is a quarterback because it's, there's so many other things that go into a quarterback than just what you see on the tape. And that's really the core of it is just there's so many different variables within a quarterback, what he has to do on the field each and every day and what he has to do every day in preparation to get there. I'm not minimizing defensive ends by any means. I was one, but it's a little more simple in terms of the evaluation process.
All right, so there once again we hear from General Manager Adam Peters talking about how the team is close to settling on a quarterback, and this is kind of why when we go through this conversation all off season long, all draft lead up long, and people are just, I remember back in January there were people who were just dead set sure that one guy was the guy, and talking about anybody else was just pointless and everything else. Look, guys, this evaluation process is long, and these guys are collecting so much information. And you even heard there, I'm talking about how they've still yet to go through all of the medical information that they collected at the combine, because there's phases to this thing, and there's watching the tape, and then they're seeing the workouts, and then they're meeting the player and doing the interviews. And then really once you kind of go through it, I mean, I don't know how they're going to check the medical reviews. There's ways to do it for everybody. They're not going to sit down and look at all 200 plus players' medical files. I can tell you that right now. I imagine, just off the top of my head, you have your medical person show up and say, okay, give us the major notes that you found. This guy's got a bad knee. This guy's got a bad back. This guy we thought had a bad neck, but in the next term, seems to be fine. The major kind of notes. And then, okay, what about this guy? What about this? What about that? What about this? And you go through and you just kind of get a brief breakdown of what is going on there. And that's just the medicals. You know what I mean? Then you got the top 30 visit notes, like you said, had a lot of individual times. They're going to share their own observations from the Top Golf Center. Again, these guys are getting evaluated 24/7. Like everything they're doing, they're getting evaluated. There's not a minute that they're not being tested and observed and evaluated. So, the decision is yet to be made. I believe Adam Peters when he says that the decision is yet to be made. I don't think he's playing coy. I don't think that he really doesn't have a reason to. Like some people will say that he's saying that because of smokescreen. It's all smokescreen. Well, to be honest with you, there's no reason for him to smokescreen. If there's going to pick a quarterback at number 2, nobody can stop him. You know what I mean? The Chicago Bears are not trading out of the number 1 overall pick. The only quarterback they brought in for a top 30 visit was Caleb Williams. They are drafting Caleb Williams at number 1, so nobody can jump ahead of the Washington Commanders. The only thing that can happen is Washington Commanders want to trade back, and not leading on that you have a favorite quarterback is not going to prevent anything from happening as far as you getting more draft capital or less draft capital. So there's no reason to be smoke screening about whether or not you've decided which quarterback you are or not going to take. And in fact, maybe if he says he does have a decision, somebody out there in the media specter will say that he's not doing enough homework and has rushed to a decision. But what I thought was interesting is Adam Peters kind of bring up the 2021 NFL draft as kind of an example of where the league, for all of the advancements that the league has made, has not necessarily figured it out yet, because that's one of the drafts that people point to his own record and say, look, this dude's not, squeaky clean. Of course, you got Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall. He's the only one that you could probably call a success. I don't know that he's necessarily reached the ceiling that people thought that he would by now. Zach Wilson, certainly not a success. Trey Lance, who went to the San Francisco 49ers after a trade up, the move that obviously Adam Peters was involved in, no longer even with that team and no longer in line to be a starting quarterback. You got Justin Fields, who's no longer with the team that drafted him, Mac Jones, who's certainly not been a success story. So a lot of, not so good quarterback production coming out of that class. And so it's just interesting. And I like the fact that Adam Peters pointed to that, because it shows that he's willing to accept his own mistakes, or at least, the parts of it that he had. So outside the quarterback, obviously the Washington Commanders need some other help, right? A lot of picks, a lot of places to go to, especially the offensive tackle position. That's something that a lot of Commanders fans have been talking about and asking about. They were asked about that in this press conference as well.
How do you see the offensive linemen, particularly tackles in this draft? And it seems like there are a handful of first round and kind of second round prospects available at that position.
Yeah, I think it's pretty universally known. It's a really good tackle class, deep tackle class. As you can see in a lot of the mock drafts, there's a ton of those guys coming off in the first round. So we got a chance to visit with a lot of them, and really at different levels. But we're really, really excited about that group. And really, I actually think it's a really good draft, especially for us. Fortunate in the top 100, there's a lot of really good players there. It may thin out later, that remains to be seen. But tackle and a lot of other positions, there's a lot of really good players that'll be available.
All right, so General Manager Adam Peters, saying a lot of good things, not a lot of things that are unknown completely to this audience here, but very good tackle class, right? And you kind of look at the line of where the Washington Commanders might trade back up into the first round. More on trade ups and trade downs here in just a little bit. And I've kind of drawn the line softly, right, at number 16. I just think anything higher than number 16, now you're kind of talking about having to give up future draft capital, not just in 2024, but also in 2025. And I think if you're looking at pick 16 or later, it's very likely that Olu Fashanu is going to be off of the board, along with guys like Joe Alt. But you might have a guy like J.C. Latham out of Alabama, who's number 18 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 prospects list. You're also looking at potentially Amarius Mims out of Georgia, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. And then you've got other offensive tackle prospects on DJ's top 50 here that, if you do a trade up or trade back into the first round a little bit later, you could even go get a guy like Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, someone who's projected quite often to be there in the early parts of day 2, say around pick 40 or pick 36, where the Commanders pick on day 2. But if there's an early run, potentially you can go up there and get a guy like that. Either way, whether you trade back into the first round or you stick in the second round and you have your 36th and 40th overall picks, there's certainly a possibility that the Washington Commanders will come away with a very good tackle. I think there is a near certainty that the Washington Commanders will come away with at least one tackle in the top 100. I think certainly it would be reasonable to say they need to take a look at trying to get 2 in the first 100 picks of this year's NFL draft. And, if you're really excited about that group, really excited about what they could do for your team, and you've got a young quarterback coming in, you really have no reason not to go after that quarterback or that offensive tackle again, or even two of them. Two more quotes coming from our executive quote day here, 5 episodes away from the first round of the NFL draft. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have been told that I can be a competitive person, and well, yeah, I do have a competitive side to me, but I think that we all do, at least to a certain extent. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure that you've heard of it because it's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of potential Monopoly boards, crazy locations, building up amazing cities that, of course, bring you big money. But the best part is you get to mess with your friends, mess with your family as you play with them. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly game. But now I can also crack into their vaults and heist all of their riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me that I'm the biggest Monopoly tycoon around. But it's not just the competitive side of me that loves it. You can also team up with those friends, team up with your family, and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get into the game and join your friends in an all-new way. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, we've got 2 more quotes coming from executives today. This one, again, coming from our pre-draft press conference with Adam Peters and Lance Newmark, a GM and assistant GM for your Washington Commanders. And we're talking about trades, moving up, moving down, having optionality. That's become one of Adam Peters' favorite words here this offseason with 9 picks, and what the Washington Commanders are currently planning to do with the number 2 overall pick.
You guys have both been part of organizations that have been turned around by a good draft. When you look at the picks you have in the top 100, especially maybe where it matches up with the strength of the draft, how much can this draft kind of really catapult this organization?
Yeah, coming into this, we've been really fortunate to have 6 picks in the top 100. Like you said, that's a big deal. And especially, I mean, having the number, it's not just 6 picks in the top 100, it's the number 2 overall pick, and then really high second round picks, and then 3 third rounds. So that's a lot that we can do with that. It can really help us. We've done, like Lance has done a really good job in free agency. We all have, and now we have a chance to really supplement that and now build through this draft and with these 9 picks that we have. And so, we're really fortunate to have that. And I think we have a real chance to make this team a lot better.
Yeah, I think with what we did in free agency, it allowed us to have more freedom in the draft to go various different directions rather than need. It really allowed us to blend need and talent. And the quality of the picks, like Adam talked about at the top of the rounds, just the real high quality level of the picks, especially those top 6, really allow us to make a dramatic impact on our roster right away.
Yeah.
Is the possibility? Oh, hi, Nikki from the Washington Post. Sorry.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The possibility of coming away from day one with not just 1 selection, but 2, is that a consideration for you guys?
Yeah, I think with the optionality we have in all those picks, anything's in consideration. So, like we've said before, we're going to do whatever's best for this organization. So if that's moving up, if that's moving back, we'll do that. And lucky for us, we have the ability to do so with all the ammo we have.
Or have you guys decided to use that number 2 pick?
We feel great about staying at number 2. I don't see a whole lot of scenarios where we trade down, to be honest with you. Yeah, we feel great about sticking there.
So there again, you've got 2 Washington executives talking to the media on Thursday about what they're going to be doing in the NFL draft class or the NFL draft, and the ability to potentially use this class to catapult the Washington Commanders into competitive football once again moving forward. And a lot of good picks here. Like they said, we talked about it a lot during this offseason, 6 picks in the top 100, the number 2 overall pick, 9 total picks. And this team has maintained the same message all offseason. They're building through the draft, supplementing in free agency. And Lance Newmark talked about getting more freedom in the draft because what they did in free agency. This is something that we talked about during the offseason early on, especially in the free agency period where they didn't go after guys like Patrick Queen, Daniil Hunter, stuff like that. And it became very clear, very obvious, very early that they were going to go heavy at adding a lot of 1-year deals outside the organization and not re-signing a bunch of people that they were, sort of inheriting from the last regime. And that's all supplementing through free agency. Now you bring in the draft class, you go after some players in some key positions. You do another evaluation process. Next year, you see what you have, where you're confident, where you're not confident. Go ahead and continue to build your team that way. I think the top 6 picks being mentioned, being used as ammo, and that's something that I thought that word was very interesting for Adam Peters to use, because ammo is not used for much more other than going and making very major impacts on things, right? So when you hear him use the term ammo for his picks, I think it's very, very indicative of there could be a trade in the works, could be a trade being talked about. Certainly things could heat up on day one, depending on how the board falls, and not against considering adding another day one pick, and that they're going to do whatever is best. And again, you use the line with all the ammo we have. And that brings us to our final executive quote for this episode. This one comes from Detroit Lions general manager Brad Holmes, who said recently in an interview, quote, "We have to do the right thing for the organization. And if that makes sense and it lines up and it's the right thing to do, then we have to do the right thing. And so say that happens where the fans have been waiting there all night for this pick, and we get an offer that we can't really turn down and make sense. We've got to do the right thing, and hopefully our fans will forgive us." Of course, what he's talking about is the prospect of the Detroit Lions trading back from number 29 overall in the first round out of the first round. The NFL draft is in Detroit this year. Detroit Lions fans are very excited about their team. They're going to be at the draft event in droves, and they're going to be waiting all night long for their Lions to come on the clock at number 29. And if the Lions trade out of the first round after that, it's going to be very interesting to see what the reaction of the fans is in Detroit, at least maybe if the trade is a good one. But when you look at the Washington Commanders, who potentially have the need or desire to trade up into the first round, the Detroit Lions potentially already open to the idea of trading out of the first round. Looking at the Rich Hill model, the Detroit Lions pick would essentially cost you the number 70 overall pick for the Washington Commanders and the number 40 overall pick, or 78th overall pick and the 40th overall pick in the NFL draft. So you trade 1 second, 1 third rounder, and you get a first rounder and probably get a 6th rounder to make the points work in the Rich Hill model. So look, if you've got a tackle up there and tackles are starting to go, and there's a guy like Amarius Mims still on the board at 29, but 2 tackles went before him, or however it's working out, there's no reason not to make that trade. And the Detroit Lions could use a lot of defensive help. So if they want to go back and get another 2nd round pick and a 3rd round pick to do so and add more defense to their unit in rounds 2 and 3, then certainly that could be the situation that general manager Brad Holmes is talking about, where it makes sense for the Detroit Lions to execute a trade like that. For the Washington Commanders, you have a quarterback, an offensive tackle on the first day of the NFL draft. You still have a 2nd round pick, and you have 2 3rd round picks. And look, if you want to get really fun with it, take 100, take your other 3rd round pick and package them up and see if you can't move back into the 2nd round or earlier in the 3rd round, or trade back that 1st round pick in the 3rd round and see if you can't collect another 4th round pick somewhere like that. Get back in the 4th round, get back in the 6th round with those 2 trades. So a lot of interesting stuff. Again, 4 quotes coming from general manager Adam Peters, assistant general manager Lance Newmark of the Washington Commanders, and then the 5th one coming from Lions general manager Brad Holmes, just giving you an idea of the options out there for the Washington Commanders, as the Detroit Lions general manager openly admitting that they are open to potentially trading back. Also, New England Patriots director of scouting also mentioned that the Patriots were open to potentially trading up, trading down, trading all around basically during the NFL draft. So watch the New England Patriots to be fairly active in this year's NFL draft. So that is our final episode here. We are 5 down. There's 4 left to go. So we will do that, pick that up on Monday. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, just throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly as a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get in on that. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.